keeps prices down far more effectively.
As long as suffering of sentient beings remain, I will remain in order to serve.
I imagined God like my grandfather.
In Conversations tonight, my guest is an artist, poet, writer, but above all, he's known as a sculptor whose works have been exhibited in museums and galleries in the capitals of the world. I'm delighted to welcome in conversation tonight, Amar Nath Sehgal. Do you sometimes regret that you're perhaps better known abroad than you are in India, and your work is more widely seen and preserved in the museums in different parts of the world than they are here?
Well, Rajiv, to be very frank with you, I feel happy as I am, whether my works are known here or there. The fact remains that my country at times do have a lacking of appreciation, as you know. But all said and done, there are no regrets. Whether people like my work here or they don't, the fact remains that I enjoy my life in both sides of the world.
You work as primarily as a sculptor, but you also write poetry, and I've seen paintings and sketches that you have done. What satisfactions does, say, sculpture give to you?
The thing is, sculpture is an ancient art, as you know. In time immemorial, everything was as if the sculptor had to produce something for the deity, to bring it something to the society so that people could worship. Not for that purpose I create, but all said and done, what you'd like to do is to create something which is perpetuates. I mean, I create a sculpture which I know will live the test of time. And if it can express certain feeling and emotion, well, naturally, it has its own elements of joy in a society that needs it.
Do you have then this sense of sort of history, of eternity, of immortality, that this piece of sculpture that you create will live 1,000 years?
Well, the thing is, one feels what one is doing should not die off. It should remain as it is in contact with time. But one does not create for that reason alone. One creates for the simple reason that the sculpture is expressive in its own right.
You know, some of your earlier sculptures, which are on display at the National Museum of Modern Art in Delhi, have this quality of anguish and the agony of the poor, in a sense of reaching out to the heavens for solutions, for help. What kind of message do you feel you want to leave behind?
Well, Rajiv, the thing is, there's a lot of pathos and suffering in society. And even if you want to withdraw yourself, you cannot. There's so much of media, it's already bringing out all this terrorism, aggression, and so on and so forth as it exists in the society. And no artist can get back from all this which hits him right into the face. If I create, I get my inspiration from the environment. Naturally, all this comes forth and comes out in my work. And there is a lot of, I mean, we had a partition of the country 50 years ago. People were without home, shelter, and so on, and food. I created work, Cries Unheard, or people who left hearth and home even in the Middle East. I created a work which is Anguish Cries, and so on. Well, these are the things which become historic because they express the times. So I created these works, not that I wanted to, but there was no way. When I get the inspiration from the environment, I have to create.
What role do you think that sculpture has, which is sort of somewhat more, how do I put this, interpretative? It's more subtle, it's more intense, but it doesn't have the graphic impact of, say, the television image. So what role does the sculpture still have?
The sculpture has a role in terms of time and distance. I mean, the media has a role to the extent that, well, you can put away what you make, supposing an interview, well, it will be put away somewhere. But the sculpture cannot be hidden. It has to be in the limelight. It has to be in terms of space. It has to be in terms of environments. So for that reason, sculpture has much more of an importance, because in the environment it lives, it breathes.
Have you found that there is a special sensibility that is able to respond to the kind of sculptures that you do? Because your work is really being exhibited, viewed and applauded in diverse cultures.
Well, the thing is, whatever I did here or there, it has been sort of appreciated, if I may say so humbly. But all said, the sculpture has to be living with the times. I cannot do a work which is not in contact with the times or not in contact with what it expresses. That is how, I live with the environment, I live with the people, I live with what they think and what they wish to do.
Let's sort of look at the creative process, perhaps, and you mentioned anguish cries. I also remember you did a sculpture in response to the hostage crisis in Iran, which you presented to President Carter at that time, called The Hostage. If we were to look at a sculpture like that, what is the creative process that involved?
I give you one little example. One day I sat in my studio and I saw the Herald Tribune. On the front page there was a photograph of a child running next to the bus. 20 buses of United Nations went to Bosnia to evacuate the people. And when the people were too many, well, they could not be accommodated. And when the fleet of buses started moving, one child fell down from the bus. Nobody picked him up. And he was running, and even parents thought, let us assume he's dead for us. Now this child was lost. He didn't know where the parents are, and the buses moved away. I was so hurt and unhappy to see this, and I said, my God, if I was a child, how would I react? I showed this photograph to many people, many of the important people, like the Prime Minister and this and that in Luxembourg and other places, and I created one of my themes. In this society, if aggression and hatred is not nubbed and not eliminated, it will burn, the society will burn to ashes. And I created this piece of work in a two-dimensional form, which I gave it all over the world. Because this was something that hit me. This was something that really inspired me to create something, to give it to the society, because no amount of policemen, no amount of armaments is going to bring about peace. Unless we deviate from one act that, aggression and hatred has to be eliminated by new methods and means.
We see a large sculpture of yours, say, there's one which you're reworking at the airport in Delhi. There's a big one at the Ford Foundation near the Indian International Center. So there's large exhibits which people see. What happens to this feeling, this emotion? Do you first draw it up? Do you make a small model? What are the stages that you go through before something magnificent like that comes up?
There is no hard and fast rule in such things. Sometimes things come out in spontaneity. I mean, you sometimes draw out something, but sometimes you never draw anything, and you are working with material. And I do not know, there is some link between what you think and feel and what comes out through your senses. And you can create, and it just comes out as if you have dictated your senses and your hands to mold into the form that is within you. So for that reason, there is no hard and fast rule, if I may say so. I mean, sometimes you do make a little drawing, a little bit of a design and so on to bring out what your feelings are, but you don't have to do it every time the same way.
Somewhat like for a filmmaker who's finished a film and his creativity is locked in the image of the celluloid. When you look at a piece of sculpture that you did 20, 30, 10 years ago, do you wish you could make changes to it in some ways?
To be very frank with you, I sometimes enjoyed seeing my old works. I feel there is something more to it than I would like to add up anything to, because I feel that it has its own entirety, it has its own volume, it has its own impact, and it has its own intrinsic worth. I don't think I can add up. It's sometimes, very satisfying to see some of your old pieces in that form and that light.
Well, I have to say that as someone who's sort of followed your work, I find that your earlier work has more sort of feeling, emotion, and intensity than perhaps the later work, which is better crafted and has more of the artist in you. Would you say that that's a fair?
No, I think to an extent you are right. But the thing is, you see, when you are working with aesthetics, you are sometimes working with only composition. You are working only with colors. You are working only in forms. You are not working all the time. You are only sieving the emotions or sealing the feeling that you derive from the environment. Sometimes the form itself is satisfying. I mean, the composition of the form and the way you hold the form, because that itself is satisfying too.
You have done some interesting work some years ago, equating or sort of looking for sculptural equivalents of musical forms. What encouraged you into that direction?
Well, I felt that form is music and music is form. Both have a certain element which is similar, that is the rhythm. I mean, the rhythm is the one thing that is very common to both. And for that reason, I picked up some form, and I felt that, the form itself can be so molded in a way that it expresses some music. And I thought that I had done some work in this direction, which people liked in the West.
Do you feel that that the Indian sensibility, which is where you have sort of drawn your inspiration from, is a sensibility that is unique or different from the Western sensibility that you spend much of your time in? And in what ways would you say that might be so?
No, I think now Indian sensibilities have also come up to a certain mark. There was a time when the Indian sensibility was very low, at the lowest step. But I think the Indian sensibilities have come up because people can afford to buy work, not only afford, they have the time to enjoy art and art forms like the West. But West has much more of a time and liking. I mean, we cannot still put up a sculpture outside and leave it out, because we still like to police it, we like to see that nobody touches it. But in the West, there are sculptures which are just lying outside for years and years and for generations, and nobody wants to do anything towards it. I mean, here you can't put a telephone on the outside, a telephone booth. You know how it is.
There are at least two sort of sculptures of yours in the public domain, which I think have hurt you deeply and have hurt people who are sympathetic to the arts. I think there was the incident at the Vigyan Bhavan where a mural of yours was destroyed, and also the sculpture at the airport, which on visits we have seen acquiring different layers and colors over the years. How does an artist sort of come to terms with sort of almost a public desecration of art?
Well, it hurts you. You cannot be a custodian of your work after you create it. Let the society own it, let the society enjoy it. But when a work of mine, 140 feet by 60 feet high, in Vigyan Bhavan, on which I spent almost 5 years of my life, it is pulled out of the wall, broken, tattered, and so on and so forth, one feels very hurt. And now I am, of course, in collision with the government that why it happened and why should it happen and why shouldn't it be reinstated. But main thing is that I want to produce some document for eternity, for time to come, that the work of art should be respected by the society. And artist has a right, a moral right, to see that his work is not destroyed.
You've also sort of, as a public cause, as it were, taken up the issue of hoardings that are put up and desecrate the environment. And I've also seen that people have come up, have sort of responded to that, the advertising community, and said that what is sort of art to one person is graffiti to the other. And how have you responded to that?
To be very frank with you, it was a very tough thing for me to fight a very powerful lobby. Hoarding lobby is a powerful lobby. They deal with crores of rupees and so on and so forth. When I pulled up this case against them because somebody next door neighbor was putting up a hoarding 50 feet high on his terrace, which was almost limping towards my ground and so on and so forth. And even at night, there would be, the flopping of lights, and I had to pull the curtains at night to sleep. So I told my lawyer, I said, what do I do? So we made a writ, and the judges agreed that, well, this is certainly a trespass on the rights of the individual and so on. And then the community, the hoarding community came to senses. They said, we'll remove it ourselves. And they did. Now the people are wanting to fight even in Madras and other places, and are approaching me if I can help them. How the hell can I take up this case and leave my own profession? But the fact is that I threw a pebble in the pond in a way that, well, there should be hoarding at places, needs to be. You know, economically we are a developing country. We need to advertise, we need to let people know what the manufacturers are creating. But all said and done, you cannot have free for all that, even on the footpath there is a hoarding and so on and so forth. And that sort of a thing, or in the public places where there should not be any hoarding whatsoever.
Moving away from the domain of hoardings, when does a piece of form or a piece of, or a section of lines or colors on a piece of paper become art?
That's a good question. To be very frank with you, one does not know that. The only thing is sometimes when you are just making a pencil drawing and you have made the drawing, after a few hours, a few days, you see it and you find that it expresses something. There is something that is vocal in it. But that is something sometimes very rare. I mean, sometimes you write few words and you do not know that it's a piece of poetry. But it turns out to be that, well, it expresses more than the word that it has. It's just the same way. You know, the words are words, but the expression in those words are much more than the words that there are. So similarly, those little doodling and sketches, they are more expressive than just the doodling and sketches. But that is in contact with the time you begin to see.
Sometimes I get the feeling that as a sensitive artist, you have so much emotion and feeling, and you experience the pain and the pathos of the community around you. And much of this is sort of struggling and seeking to find expression. And sometimes it finds expression in poetry, sometimes in sketches and in sculpture. Can you distinguish what satisfactions you derive when the expression is purely verbal, as in poetry, or in form when it's sculpture?
Well, at times you move from one to the other, and you are not holding yourself tight in one compartment. I mean, I say a few words. I feel torn and lost with ample hits and knocks, but thy cozy, warm rhythm restores me at last. Well, few words sometimes are very expressive, whether it's the cuddling of your own nearby, or the environment, or the society, but it is something which is very true. Similarly, you make a sculpture. Same feeling you can give it in the sculpture or in the form too. But that depends upon how you are dealing with one media to the other. You know, the medium itself has its own dictates, and you have to abide by the dictates of the medium.
You work with, primarily when you're working on sculpture, you work with clay, and it's clay that you give form to, which then is, you make a bronze replica or an enlargement of it. What is your relationship to something that's really inert and is, in a sense, just being used to create something much more powerful?
Well, the thing is, when you are working with any medium, the medium has to speak out to you how you are going to deal with the inner feeling that you have. Not that there is a definite hard and fast rule that you dictate your feeling 1, 2, 3 into the medium like you do with the other, with a computer and so on and so forth. But there is a certain element of homogeneity between the feeling and the medium. So that if you can bring those together, I mean, sometimes I switch from one medium to the other. I'm working, supposing, with clay and medium. Well, the clay is very heavy, tiresome, difficult, this, that, other. You have to make the mold, the cast, and so on. But sometimes I sit with my pen and pencil, and I feel, well, I should do some sketches. Or I write a piece of poetry. Well, these are the medium that the same way, all those feelings, the same way which get expressed into bronze or sculpture can be expressed into the other medium too. So you are changing the medium as and when you feel like, because that's the only way for you also to relax. So is there a feeling of catharsis when you create a piece of work? Well, there is a definite feeling catharsis. There is a definite feeling that there's something inside you which comes out. And the media is giving you so much every day. There is never the time to do it. That's why there is always this, the artist is always under a stress. You know, we are all stressful people. I mean, the only respite for me is to have my meditation and my yoga and so on, or relax with the environments and with nature, and as you know. But otherwise, the environment is too stressful. It's not easy to live. There's so much happening in the country or outside, which, I mean, the bomb blast, the powerful, the media, the cases of corruption and so on. Everything disturbs you. With all that disturbance that you get within you, you feel like expressing more and more. But you cannot express too much. Everything you cannot express.
For someone with that kind of sensitivity, how do you respond to both a favorable response from critics in the community and unfavorable ones? How important is that response to you?
To be very frank, now it doesn't hurt me, but it used to hurt me. I used to feel very bitter at times when people leveled charges against me. It was not in terms of anything, it was more personal. If it was in terms of objectivity of forms, objectivity of praising the work, I would not mind it. But there was no objectivity. It was only a personal, why so-and-so has created this. I mean, this is not a way of criticism. All said, if any critic is to write, he should be a little more objective. He should not say, I feel. He should feel one with the people and one with the artist. What the artist has done, he should try to understand his work in that light. And then only he should be able to write.
Your work was exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art in Paris, and some of your works are a part of the permanent collection there. How does, and this was more than 25 years ago, how does an emerging Indian sculptor find a place in the Museum of Modern Art in Paris? It's a great tribute to you. What happened? What was the sequence of events?
Well, the thing is, when I went to Europe, it was so interesting that I had my first exhibition in Europe in Belgrade. And the Museum of Modern Art Paris, a committee of 3 people to come and review my work. And they gave a report which was seen by Malraux, and Malraux decided right away that I should be invited to the museum. It was not my decision, it was not my pushing, but it was a verdict of a committee which was sent by the Paris Museum and the Ministry of Culture to view my work. That's how it was. But the thing is, you see, it's very difficult to find a way to exhibit the work in any country in Europe. One, the galleries are limited, there are too many artists, the space is not there, the time is not there, and for any artist to go from here with all his work is not that easy. If I found a place on my foot in the West, or anywhere in Europe or America, I go a few times a year, as you know, but that's my joy, that I'm trying to live on both sides of the world, create here, create there, come back and be one with the environment here and there too. But the thing is, it's very difficult for any artist to have that sort of a life. It's not that easy.
You have established a foundation in Luxembourg, and you have a fairly substantial ongoing presence in Luxembourg. Can you tell us something about the foundation?
I was always feeling at one time that young artists do need a help. If at my own young age, if somebody had helped me, I would have been very happy. But I never found a help. So for many, many years, I was thinking I should make a creative fund, which I did and made it in Luxembourg. I registered it in Luxembourg, which was inaugurated by the Prime Minister, who is now the head of the EEC, Jack Centers. He was very happy, and Couillard was very happy, the ex-Secretary General of the United Nations, that I was making this foundation. It has been working. It doesn't have too much of money. I sell my work many times, and I give it to the foundation. At the moment, 1-2 artists are here. I'm sending one from here to Europe also. I keep doing all the time something or the other for one artist or another who is deserving. But I'm not the only one to do it. I mean, after all, my arms are limited, my pocket is limited too. I would like to do more and more. And I hope gradually I feel that the foundation will get more and more momentum from the society here and abroad.
How conscious do you remain of your Indianness, given the fact that you established a foundation in Luxembourg and not in India, and you are truly a global artist?
The foundation also established here too, and also in America. I'm wanting to put it in few countries. In fact, it's registered here also, and we are helping many artists here. In fact, it has quite a bit of money here too. So it's not that it's only abroad, because I feel that I, being an Indian, would like to help my own countrymen more. More and more my countrymen should be able to go abroad, see the work, exhibit the work, and if possible, be able to make the best of their own means and methods. So for that reason, I'm more Indian, because if I am abroad even for 6 weeks, I like to come back here for 4 to 6 weeks again. I don't like to stay long. You have known me for that long of time, and you know that I hate to live abroad all the time.
What is it about India that attracts you and brings you back?
Well, I feel even the dust in the environment itself is invigorating, and I know that there are many, many hurdles and difficulties. I mean, the media, the society, the telephone, or any such things, you know. The overall picture is at times not very happy, it's rather gloomy, but still I think there is something in you that really makes you live with the environment, feel like enjoying the environment. I go to Bhogal, even to the shopkeepers, and buy my own vegetable, and to see them spread out on the pavements, it's a joy to see it, the warmth of colors, and to even buy those vegetables, which you don't find in an environment so easily outside.
What remaining agenda do you have for yourself? You're pretty much at the pinnacle of achievement as an artist in sculpture and on a global scale. You've established foundation to help young people, the next generation of artists. What agenda remains for you? What would you really like to achieve now?
To keep doing the work as much as possible, and to make the foundation a little more stable, steady, and more with a quantum of growth for time to come.
Thank you very much indeed.
So kind of you.